So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's ECOS webinar, part of our Cancer Mission Impact, a practitioner series, Learn, Test, Come Back. Today's session focuses on exploring how national cancer mission hubs can more effectively engage with the pharmaceutical sector, and we are very excited to bring together key voices from the field to unpack some common myths and share practical insights. This session is part of the broader ECOS effort to strengthen the implementation of the cancer mission by enabling peer exchange and practical learning. While collaboration with researchers, health professionals, and civil society is often more straightforward, engagement with the private sector often raises questions about roles, values, expectations, and outcomes. And our objective today is to really help clarify those questions. We will be looking at real-world examples, sharing practical insights, and learning from those already working across sectors. We are joined today by 4 speakers representing FP Oncology platform, as well as global industry perspectives, and we will hear from each of them in a moment. I want to also tell you that we will also open the floor for a short Q&A session, so please feel free to use the chat to share your questions or reflections at any time. Our first speaker is Ivana Cataneo, Chair of the FP Oncology Platform and Executive Director for Therapeutic Area Advocacy and Precision Medicine at Novartis. Ivana, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Bianca. Thank you all. I hope you can hear me well today. Yes? Okay. And thank you for inviting us to this session to debunking the myths around how we can work together. I am from Novartis, that's my affiliation, and I am the chair of the FP Oncology platform. And we have some slides, not so many, but just maybe also because this is part of the educational series, maybe they are important for you to be able to go back after the webinar. And I don't know, Andrea or Bianca, if you can help us with the slide. In the meantime, I'll keep going. I really also want to thank all the participants for being here and like all of us, staying focused on cancer, on treating it, mindful, and despite whatever it's going on and all the crisis we have worldwide. But we do have a duty towards the patient, the cancer patient, so we carry on. If we move to the next slides, I'm going to give you an overview of the FP Oncology platform. FPA, it's our industry federation, and we have today Magda with us that fully represents it. The FP Oncology platform, next slide please, is one of the disease platform within FPA. So there are several working groups, and then there are some disease platforms. Who are we? 22 companies. So we have in the platform the major company active in oncology, but also, which I think it's relevant for the work of ECOS, we also have, as part of the platform, representative from the National Industry Association, chaired by myself. And you have we have the beauty to have with us today also Caterini from GSK and Sebastian from Roche, who are the vice chair. We have been, let's say, traveling together in the FPA platform, I think, since 10 years by now, always to do policy work around cancer policy, and all our work has always been driven by one vision that you can see there. And the vision is that every patient in Europe has timely access to the cancer care they need. And this is essentially the basis that inform all the work that we do, that, as I mentioned, is primarily policy work. Obviously, alone, we cannot do a lot. So we do work with a variety of stakeholders, and our initiative over the year, they really involved, and you will see in the slide after, more than 150 stakeholders, sometimes representative from the patient community, the medical society, NGOs, institution, policymaker in Europe, so doing work centrally with Brussels, but also in the country. What you see in the bottom of the slide is the topic priority. The way we work is that we set topic priority for a certain number of years, and then within each year we deep dive exactly with we are industry, like a tactical plan, so exactly what we are going to do. The topic priority, first and foremost, is the one around access, because that's really in line with our vision. Every day counts for cancer patients, for all of us. So how we can contribute and promote timely and broad patient access to cancer medicine. But then we know the criticism towards ourselves, sustainability, innovation, it's not an enemy of sustainability. So we did a lot of work to say innovation can be leveraged by the system, by policymakers to make the healthcare system sustainable. We are in Europe. We have the beauty of having a cancer plan and a cancer mission, so we had work around it. And then there is also the way we work. So what I described until now, it's the what, and the how. It's really collaboratively with the environment, with the other group active in the cancer space, and then also within healthcare, because as I mentioned, healthcare is not just oncology platform; it's much, much broader than that. When we come, and we can see this in the next slide, to the specific work program that we have this year, it goes around evidence, and the biggest activity we did this year is the work with the Institute of Health Economics in Sweden, and the release of the country comparator. Our policy work is solidly grounded in evidence. The cancer comparator report, it's something that traditionally we update with IHE, and they maintain all their independence in that every 2, 3, 4 years, depending on the data from the various registries are available. And there it's where we really go and look where are we in the different countries in Europe, in advancing access to cancer care, not just cancer medicine. We had, this report was officially launched in what we call a flagship event that was at the beginning of the year. And then you can see here the other activity we are running. As you know, technology assessment, oncology, and ATMP are the first wave of compound going through the new UHTA regulation. So we do have work around that, and we will give some example later on. We do have some work debunking the myths. I know that people always think that the system goes bankruptcy because of the cancer medicine. We have some work coming up that will be released soon that will show exactly the opposite in a way, so stay tuned. And then there is work, as I said, the link to the cancer plan. For example, the collaboration on cancer screening. We have the cancer screening recommendation since a couple of years, so how to help the other stakeholder in the system and national authority to speed up the uptake of that. Work on precision oncology, which is also a big chapter of the cancer mission and the cancer plan, and then the work on national cancer plan. It's very important that we have a European plan against cancer, but then nobody of us live in a bubble. We live in member states, we live in town, in specific member states, and that is where we want to see advancement in the countries. So this is very high level. Happy to come back any moment during the webinar or after to give more detail if any of you is interested in this or want to partner with us on one of these topics. And with that, I'm passing to Sebastian, who will zoom out and say something more about us, not just as a platform, but as an industry. Thank you, Sebastian.
Thank you, Ivana, for that introduction, and thank you, ECOS, for inviting us and for making sure that the pharmaceutical industry is part of this dialogue. So, good afternoon, everyone. I'm here on behalf of the FP Oncology platform, as Ivana has mentioned, and I work for Roche in the global policy team. I'm the vice chair of the FP Oncology platform, along with Ekaterine and Ivana as the chair. So, in terms of the footprint of the industry in Europe, I just want to share a few numbers with you and also explain a little bit how this translate into the commitment that we as an industry have when it comes to oncology. So one message that is really clear is that the pharmaceutical industry in Europe is a vital stakeholder in the present and the future of cancer care. And I think that's the one message that we need to to leave the room today with. We're contributing with 50 billion investment annually in research and development in Europe. This is also contributing to millions of jobs with skilled people across the region, 2.3 billion from scientists to those on the ground that are making sure that our treatments are reaching the patients that need it the most. And then a 2% of the gross value added. So it's that a direct contribution that we're making to the economy and to the healthcare system within the region. So how this translates into cancer care and why do we care about it for this specific conversation today? So if we move to the next slide, these graphics are part of a recent report that we launched in partnership with the Swedish Institute of Health Economics, IHE. And it's mentioning a little bit, and maybe the numbers are a little bit too small, but I invite you to take a look to the report when you have the chance after the call. And it's really looking at how the incidence and mortality in cancer care in the region is increasing. So comparing from 1995 until 2050, how are we going to see the burden of disease coming life? And this is not news for you. I'm sure as a cancer community in the European region, you are fully aware of that, but just making sure that we as an industry are contributing from diagnostics to treatment to different and innovative pathways as well for delivery. That's how we're doing it. Also, in terms of approvals, we just wanted to show a little bit on EMA approvals from 1995 to 2020. How have we increased? And this is not only because of the cases of cancer care increasing, but also because innovation and research is making it possible for all of us to understand what is behind cancer care. We cannot call it just one disease, but multiple diseases. So making sure that we have that personalized approach is giving us the opportunity to bring treatments that are targeted and that allow us to actually tackle the need of the patients. And on the right side, you see a clear example on multiple myeloma on how the industry has directly with the treatments that we're bringing, making sure that more than 2,000 people are actually able to survive and to continue a normal life despite a disease that in the 90s it was taking the lives of more than hundreds of people in the region. So just making sure, and as this example, there's so many others, but just understanding that cancer is over the third of Europe's drug pipeline. So we're really investing in oncology when it comes to treatment and cancer care. If we move to the next one, yes, but not everything is so pretty and so happy. Let's say we're falling apart and behind when it comes to the leadership that Europe has over the last decades when it comes to research and development. China and the US are taking the lead in so many of these fronts, and it's not to be dramatic, but just to understand that we as a oncology community need to come together and make sure that Europe stays at the front. So just throwing a few numbers for understanding what's the reality. Despite the growth around 4% every year between 2010 and 2022 in terms of R&D, China has grown nearly 5 times faster in that same period. So just for us to understand that it doesn't mean that because we're growing, other regions are not taking the leadership there. In terms of fewer medicines that are discovered in Europe as well. So in 2023, China was beating Europe when it comes to launching new active substances. So something for us to really take into consideration. And then on the bottom, you see a little bit of the numbers in terms of clinical trials. So how do we make sure that Europe stays at the front, not only from discovering these treatments, but also making sure that our patients are part of those clinical trials that are bringing innovation, not only for the region, but worldwide. So one final message in terms of that footprint is how do we make sure as a community that we support what the industry is doing, that we invite the industry from the beginning to the dialogue. And I think today is a great example of how we can continue collaborating. I hand over back to Ivana. Thank you.
Thank you, Sebastian. And as you can imagine, for us, also the topic of keeping Europe at the forefront of innovation or clinical trial is super important. I think it's important for every disease area, but when When we think to cancer, we know, and it's clearly recognized also in the cancer plan and the cancer mission, 40% of cancer are preventable, and we have to do whatever to do that. But look at the number, it means that 60% of the cancer, more or less, are not preventable. So we really need research. We really need innovation to come if we really want to bend the curve and tackle the disease. Now, in the following part, what we were thinking to do is, given the scope and the purpose of this webinar, is to, on one side, give some example of the collaboration that we had as a FP Oncology platform, and then with Caterini, and then with Magda. So we do the what and the how again, and then with Magda we go broader. So example on the industry, pharmaceutical industry in general, and the how. So if we go to the next slide, we put there some of the collaboration just to give some inspiration. I mentioned the work before we did on the council screening recommendation. There was a partnership we did with Olcan. We wanted to do this at national level, so we look for an organization with whom we had some common interest in pushing this and coverage at national level, so outside of Brussels. Inequality, it's a topic which is very dear to us, and that is where we started the collaboration with Cancer Patient Europe, because that's a topic super relevant for patients as well, and the Institute of Health Economics, because we always need to have solid evidence before, well, that's the way we work, before going out and asking something. But also on data, I guess many of you are familiar with the ECO European Cancer Pulse, which is a very useful, super useful tool. That again came out of the collaboration between ECO and the FP Oncology platform, where we create with them a collaboration in order to provide the first data for the different chapters that you see in the Pulse, for them to populate the tool. We created the tool, and then now the tool has its own life. But also some work, you see many of the logo of the organization we work through, in order really to say innovation can help sustainability, innovation can help addressing the medical desert that we are seeing in Europe. We also have two other important collaboration, and I would like to ask you, Ekaterini, to take us through them. As you know, access is part of our vision, and Ekaterini kindly will explain to you more in detail what happened on these two special projects that we have. Thank you, Ekaterini.
Thank you. So next slide, please. I'm Ekaterini Famelli, Vice Chair of the FP Oncology Platform and Global Head of Oncology and HTA at GSK. And thank you, Ivana, for presenting on how we collaborate with stakeholders across the cancer community and how these partnerships are really helping drive meaningful and patient-centered change. If we can go to the next slide. So another important initiative I'd like to highlight is the work of the FP Oncology platform on surrogate endpoints. With this project, we address the critical issue of the misperception around the role and the value of non-overall survival endpoints in oncology. And while an important goal for all oncology drugs is to demonstrate overall survival of patients, this requires long-term mature data to show. OS can take more than 10 years to demonstrate and is often confounded by subsequent treatments or treatment switching. Therefore, acceptance of overall survival alone to determine the value of the medicine may delay or deny the patient access to potentially life-saving therapies or therapies with improved outcomes beyond survival. So we thought that there is a real opportunity to examine other surrogate endpoints that are relevant to reflect medicine's value. So our goal was to talk about the broader acceptance of the non-overall survival endpoints like PFS, like MRD negativity, and many more, and ultimately reduce the barrier to their use in HTA decision-making. So the aim was, again, to enable faster, more comprehensive access to innovative cancer treatment for patients. So to do this, we engaged in extensive stakeholder dialogue. including interviews with healthcare professionals, patient advocacy groups, regulators, and taxpayers. We had roundtable discussions bringing together diverse perspectives across the oncology ecosystem. And this work has led, and we can go to the next slide, to the development of many different deliverables that you see here. And I'm going also to highlight a few of them. So white papers, webinar, posters, and if we go to the next slide, I can highlight the white paper that we co-created actually, with 11 organizations representing patients, clinicians, payers, outlining the value of endpoints beyond OS in HTA and policy context. And at the next slide, we can see the webinar that we did, a webinar which explored the value, the barriers, and practical actions needed to better incorporate non-OS endpoints and PROs into oncology HTA. And then, and we can go to the next slide, we've brought this insight to the global stage through presentations and posters at ISPOR to increase the broader policy and academic dialogue in this area. So what made this initiative impactful? It was how it was built. So through a true collaboration, by engaging all key stakeholders early, but also meaningfully, we ensure that the outputs reflect the real-world needs and offer practical, but also consensus-driven recommendations. Now another project, and we can go to the next slide, that I would like to share. It is about the EU HTA implementation initiative that was led by the FP Oncology platform. Next slide. This project was launched last year before the guidelines and the implementation acts of the EU HTA were published. What we did was to proactively assess the implications of the proposed UNETA 21 methods for joint clinical assessments on oncology medicines, particularly as the final implementing arrangements under the EU HTA regulation were being shaped by the European Commission. Our objective was to evaluate how the draft methodologies that were published up to that time would impact oncology medicines in practice, but also to provide concrete and evidence-based recommendations that ensure JCAs are truly workable, both in terms of feasibility and impact, and ultimately support timely and equitable access for European patients. Next slide. So the project gathered insights through collaborative analysis, and here you see the results. So we did the real-world case discussions, and we received the expert input. And this allowed us to present key learnings and share forward-looking proposals just as the frame was being finalized, so that to help the thinking around the UHTA implementation. Once again, this initiative reflects the value of early constructive engagement between industry regulators, HTA bodies, and clinical experts. Closing, I would like to say that everything we do, from data initiatives to policy, is really anchored in our shared goal, every patient in Europe to have timely access to the cancer care they need. So we know that we can only achieve this through open dialogue, trust, but also genuine collaboration with multiple stakeholders. So now I will pass to Magda from FPA to continue the discussion on the topic.
Thank you very much, Ekaterini, and thanks also to the organizers. I can only echo the thanks to ECHOS for having us here today. And what I would like to do is to complement the fantastic initiatives that were described earlier with another item. So I'm leading FPA Science and Regulatory team, and for the last 16 years, I've been doing public-private collaboration, not only on policy development, but also on developing large-scale public-private partnership research programs that can align understanding, deliver solutions, and think about their deployment in real life. And without initiatives like the ones that have been just described by my colleagues from the oncology platform, we wouldn't be able to take them to the next level of deployment and implementation, because without the policy work, things simply do not happen. But now I've been given the task of explaining how to engage with industry. So first, I'll give you a couple of examples of what public-private collaborations are and what they are not. And then what are the very practical steps you can take to, and what are the points to consider to engage in a fruitful collaboration. So let's start with a couple of premises. I think when we are talking about public-private collaboration, we are not talking only about co-funding and knocking on industry door for money. We are talking about coming together in order to define problem, align on the problem, but also develop the solution together. It is a community of brain rather than thinking about outsourcing some work to be done by somebody else and then take it or not in our daily research and healthcare practice. So first, partnerships, it's working together. The second is that the public-private collaboration can happen absolutely everywhere along the value chain, from discovery to healthcare delivery. And there are no limitations of what can be done together. The only limitation is our own limitations of wanting or not to change our ways of working and engaging with the other parties, because working together in a public-private partnership means that we need to meet somewhere in the middle and change the ways we are doing things. Collaborating doesn't mean doing the same as always with more people around. It means doing something together, and it means also changing our ways of working. So I'm saying that because it's not always very easy to do, and we are all entrenched in our institutional imperatives as well. So it's important that we think about, I want to engage. That means that I'm expecting the other party would change something in their ways of working, and I would do it as well. As I said, also the partnerships can happen not only along the entire value chain from discovery to healthcare delivery. There are also different models of collaboration that are suitable from prevention, treatment, cure. So we can do research together. We can do healthcare optimization together, and we can do policy work that helps implementing the science and the new solutions together. It's really important to think that if we want to go further, we need to go together with the others. The alignment work that my colleagues have just described earlier, the common understanding, the alignment on questions and on solutions and on the what is needed in the ecosystem to implement that, all of that contributes to maybe doing it a little bit slower, but in the end doing it, while if we advance separately, we are not necessarily achieving this. Let me illustrate. In addition to the policy examples that were given, in the context of the Innovative Medicines Initiative and Innovative Health Initiative, and I'm not saying that this is the model of collaboration, I'm just saying this is the model I know best and where we've done a lot of joint work. We have done projects like, for example, ITTCP4, which is creation of one of the biggest worldwide, I think, even preclinical platforms for children oncology, which has biobanks, which have public and private researchers working together on finding new targets in order to develop medicines, future treatments for children-specific tumors. Really important. That type of work cannot be done by any party separately. That requires us working together. Another example is diagnosis. And again, with Cancer ID or Guide MRD, we are looking at circulating tumor cells. We are looking at a number of diagnostic means. There is a need for standardization, and this standardization can only happen if the public and private sectors are joining forces together. And then we need to translate it into regulation. And again, that needs to happen together. Another example, it's real-world data, beautifully described earlier about what's needs to happen in order to respond to the needs of regulators and HTA bodies, but it's also about data quality, access to data, and all of that needs to happen if we work together. Otherwise, we are creating our own data silos and we can't advance further. And there are many questions of how to do it and how to do it in a way that does not create conflicts of interest or that does not jeopardize patient safety. I think this is really very important. And projects like Harmony, like Pioneer, like many others are actually addressing these problems. So now, how did they come about? Why did we do that? And what did we learn from them in terms of lessons learned? So the first lesson learned is that industry brings much more value than only money. And I would like to highlight that very strongly, that when we engage in these public-private collaborations, the first thing that public partners think is industry can bring funding or drugs. And I think we can bring much more. So what do we bring clearly to the table when you engage with us? Why would you come and want to work with individual companies or trade associations? So first question, we do have the knowledge, we do research, we do work and breathe science every day. And there are many things that we don't know, but there are many things that we know. And therefore we can bring that scientific acumen to the table, which is complementary to the one that academia and regulators and patients and healthcare professionals have. This is an opportunity to create a bigger knowledge base and to do something of a much bigger quality than when we do it alone. The other thing that we bring to the table is our knowledge of the regulatory science. And I think that knowing the whole process of medicines development end to end helps us to understand both what is the regulation, how it is applied in practice, what are the regulatory requirements, but also what is the combination of the different requirements along the value chain that needs to be followed. And I think that's, again, quite a unique characteristics of the industry acumen that we are bringing to the table. And in many projects, what is really mostly valued is that regulatory knowledge and support. The other point, and I would only give 2 more examples and then point you at a report which describes that in many more details, is again, the path to deployment. Since we know, because we observe the product from its discovery to its deployment and post-marketing safety, that means that we can also help when we look at the research program to already plan the next steps and to identify what is needed going forward. So even if we don't do it together, this vision, this broader vision, and the full path from scientific idea to deployment in healthcare systems might actually be super helpful when planning for the different stages of development of a project. We have generated recently a report together with IRDIR, with the International Rare Disease Consortium, which is available on the IRDIR website, where we describe the various items that the industry brings to the table. And the final points for me is the practicalities. So there are several myths that I would like to address. And the first one, which comes very often, is, the industry cannot add much besides the drugs and the money. I think I've just demonstrated that we can add much more. We have our labs, our scientists, and our knowledge of the system. And this is what we can clearly bring to the table. If the money is the main driver, then I would say it is the wrong driver, because partnerships can be more powerful than that. So if you partner for the good reason, know what you want to achieve and then engage. The second is, can I trust? So people are always often reluctant to say, why would I engage in a public-private partnership? I have my own interest, why should I? Well, first, because as I said earlier, we advance much further when we do things together. We all have one piece of the knowledge that can help us to resolve a problem. And I think the secret is to engage early. If you come with a project that is well packaged with ribbons and flowers, but it's already done, and you come to a company or to a group of companies with a proposal, that's too late. That's where you come with your assumptions, and they would be based on their assumptions. So my proposal is that when you want to partner, know why, but also engage very early at the time of the idea rather than at the time of a proposal, because then it's simply not as productive and as creative. And let's remember that even though we all operate in the health space, in reality, we use different language, we have different timelines, we have different goals and objectives. Aligning all of that can only happen if we start very, very early from the idea. So ideating together, defining problems together, and then resolving problems together is the only way of doing that well. And then the next myth is, if I engage with industry, I lose my IP. Why would I share my data? They would take it away from me. I heard that so many times. And having witnessed more than 220 projects in IHI, I can tell you, none of that has ever happened. There is an added value in working together. So first, in a public-private partnership, if we engage early and define early what we want to achieve, everybody puts a skin in the game. You know, the industry comes with their data, you come with your data, we win because we are getting something together. So engage early, define the rules of why you want to work together, define what you want to protect and why. Sometimes we want to protect the wrong things for the wrong reasons. And let's define the rules of what needs to be protected and how for the duration. That's done early. It's really helpful. And there are very helpful standard contracts that allow doing that. If you go to the IHI website, you would find standard contracts, standard consortia agreements that are very applicable beyond IHI and are just suited for public-private collaborations and fulfill both sides' imperatives. The last 2 points is, it's complicated. I don't want to get there because it's just too hard. I would need to adapt to somebody else. Yes, that's the price to pay. It's the same for the industry. If we engage in a public-private partnership, that means that we don't follow the normal path of drug development or drug development tools development. It would be slower, but it would be more effective in the end. So I think be ready to change your usual ways of working. And finally, for those who say it will not work, I would say if you don't try, you don't know. So try, knock on doors, talk to industry, and we can give you the tools and the instruments that would help a fruitful collaboration. I think I'll stop here and happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all our speakers for the insightful presentations. We've heard a clear picture about the evolving role of the pharmaceutical industry, including concrete examples of public-private partnerships and reflections on how to engage meaningfully and responsibly. And with that foundation, we now open the space for questions and reflections from the audience. Feel free to use the chat to share your thoughts or ask a question. And the first question that we have in the chat is, how do you see the new EU pharmaceutical legislation? Taking it for granted, what can be done? How can we use it to increase EU competitiveness? As one of the speakers said, Europe is lagging behind. Any comments?
Ivana, do you want to start? Okay. So very important question, because this legislation is once in a lifetime opportunity for many people actually to do the things right for the future and to make a future-proof legislation that would make Europe very competitive. I think that there are many elements in the discussion that might help achieving this goal. But we are not yet there. So we had a proposal from the European Commission that was, I think, modernizing the regulatory framework, but was also addressing some in the incentives elements. In the quite fundamental incentives elements, I think the Commission proposal or the package that we have on the table today lost a lot of the regulatory modernization and did not completely address the question of incentives for the future. So we are sort of on the path to improvements, but we are not yet there in terms of creating really that ecosystem that we need in Europe compared with other regions worldwide.
And in the same line, what can be the role of national cancer mission hubs to support advancing EU competitiveness in oncology?
Maybe I can take this one. I think there is a role in partnership, meaning, and I do a mix with the previous question. Sometimes legislation are coming up out of position which are different more than interests that are common. The interest that we all have is to keep Europe really at the forefront of innovation, going faster to development, going faster to those who need. So that's the interest. And in terms of position, even us here today, each one of us has a different position. So we may, while on interest, we may find an area of collaboration. On position, we may become rigid in our own position. So even avoiding listening and really understanding the point of view of the other. So I think the National Cancer Mission Hub can really play a role as a convener of different parties, really in the spirit of, guys, we all have the same interest. If you get sick in Europe, you need to have the best standard of care possible. But to do that, you need to have the best research possible. Now, the same concept maybe said by another type of stakeholder may generate antibodies because it's a position. No, here it's in India. So I really think the National Cancer Mission Hub can convey dialogue at national level, remembering that in the process of the legislation, it's not just the European Parliament or the European Commission. The member states, the council, they have a voice. So that's something that can be done, yes.
I would add to that I think when we look at what a good research, what a good life science, competitive life science ecosystem needs, it needs a regulatory environment, of course, but it also needs more collaboration. And this is when Europe actually used to be better than anybody else by enabling collaborations that were not enabled elsewhere. This the hubs can actually do. It is about data and access to data. It is about accelerating clinical trials. It is about creating stronger biotech clusters and biomedical research clusters across Europe. It is about creating a more streamlined and more simplified practice of whether on the regulatory side or in research funding, etc. I think that the hubs can really become not only the conveners, but also the proponents of solutions that would help progressing much faster and closing the gap that Europe has in translational science. I think this is where the biggest gap is in Europe. We are not short of fantastic science, but we are very bad at speed and at scale, translating ideas into potential products. So hubs can definitely do that and help advancing much faster in the future.
Thank you. And I think, of course, National Cancer Mission hubs and hub-like structures are in different levels of maturity at present in Europe. And for the emerging hubs that are not familiar with public-private partnerships, how can they reach out to industry? What would be some practical first steps, let's say?
So always Magda can add, but I should say that we are always open to dialogue, so they can leverage existing platforms and forums like FPA to start with. And if they don't know what is their local industry association, we can direct them. There are also teams that are typically responsible for certain partnerships and well positioned to connect. So we can really, FPA, for example, can really direct them. So I suppose, Magda, with a simple Google search of FPA, they can identify an email and they can reach out to FPA, and then the teams can really navigate them, identify the right contact points and people where they can start discussing and explaining the specific objective of the collaboration and topics that different teams are having in their mind.
Nothing to add to that. It's exactly right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. Now let's move to the next question. Can you identify a handful of topics of interest for the industry, which may be common to National Cancer Mission hubs and be an area for collaboration?
I may give one on policy term, and then Magda, I may refer to you for the broader beyond oncology. So, as I mentioned, the FP Oncology platform is working on policy. And actually, here, maybe I loop you in, Sebastian. One area where I think we can have a collaboration at national level is on the National Cancer Control Plan. And Sebastian, I know you are working on this also outside of Europe, so I don't know if you want to add something here.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Ivana. Happy to. So I was thinking when I read that question on two specific things. One of them is the work that we have done with IHE, as I mentioned, the comparator report on cancer care. What we're doing now, we launched it in Brussels in March, but the most important thing is how do we put that information and we make it relevant for those national stakeholders. So now we're having roundtables that are led by our local stakeholders, and I think that's a very tangible way to make sure that we raise awareness on this is the current data that we have when it comes to cancer care in this specific context, and how do we move forward in terms of policy solutions for that specific member state. And the second one that I think, Ivana, you're referring to is we're also partnering recently with UICC, the Union for International Cancer Control, and they have launched in May this year the first cancer control planners forum, which brings everyone in the government really in the ground implementing the cancer care and bringing different stakeholders. Private sector was able to be part of it, and making sure that we're having that dialogue, understanding, okay, this is where you are, and these are the top 3 priorities that we have at a national level, and making sure that everyone is having a dialogue. So happy also to be a bridge if you don't have that specific content on UICC, and also share a little bit more on what FPIA and FPIA Oncology platform role was within that first forum as well.
Perfect. Can you also provide examples of public-private collaborations happening at individual member states? Is another question here. Yes.
I don't have any specific examples of national colleagues that work in companies and are engaged in bilateral or multilateral collaborations in countries can talk to it, but I just want to say that European partnerships are also being done in countries because they are not, Europe is not a separate planet somewhere else, and participants to those large-scale partnerships or European partnerships operate in countries. And very often, actually, the large pan-European partnerships start with a national bilateral collaboration or with collaborations that are financed by the national research or other schemes, and then turn into applications to European programs, or the other way around. People get to know each other in these large-scale pan-European collaborations, and then from there do successful collaborations locally. I would like to say that just I witnessed 200 public-private partnership programs, and all of those that I mentioned earlier were and are still very successful because they develop practical solutions and do not only help to align understanding, but also deliver something that would have an impact for patients. If I take the project on standardization of circulating tumor DNA tests, which are all different, all give different readout, and all give different reply to the same question, that means that we have a problem. By standardizing, we standardize not only the ability to correctly diagnose patients, but also measure how the treatment really works in patients once we give to them. So I think these are really successful examples of defining together a problem, defining together a solution, working towards that. And what's maybe missing, and this is where the hubs can play a great role, is to facilitate the deployment in healthcare delivery, because this is where the research programs usually do not go that last mile, which is how do we get to the decision makers of deploying these new tests, these new ways of working, these new biomarkers in medical practice, in clinical practice, in hospitals and and every doctor's toolkit, basically. So I think that's really missing, and this is where the hubs can be extremely helpful in taking us to that last mile.
If I may bring two quick examples, as many others, just to add to what Magda has shared, the OLCAN initiative that we have in terms of screening and making sure that recommendations are implemented at a national level. So we're working with some of those national associations, not only to raise awareness, but actually to have an action plan in terms of the implementation. And the second one, and I know ECOS is very close to it because you had a webinar recently about it, is City Cancer Challenge, that I think is a great example on how to tackle from that healthcare system perspective, from a city and the national level, those cancer care challenges.
Perfect. And I think another topic, if we're discussing about collaboration, you mentioned in the white paper on endpoints that Ekaterini presented, that calls for better alignment among stakeholder groups. I was wondering what is currently missing in these conversations between regulators, HTA bodies, and patient groups. How can National Cancer Mission hubs help drive the alignment on endpoints that really matter to patients in their specific national context? If you could maybe briefly comment on that. We have around 10 minutes left.
Yes, thank you so much. So this is an ongoing discussion, and it is not easy to be answered because different countries, different healthcare systems accept different endpoints. This is coming a little bit into alignment due to JCA at clinical level, but more need to happen at local level. So better understanding around the acceptance, better understanding on what these endpoints serve at each level. I mean, advancing cancer care or early stage, what do they mean for the patients? And hearing the voice of the patients and the voice of the clinicians be understood and then be accepted with terms, of course, but making sure that the patients are having access early enough to medicines that may prolong their life until a new treatment that might be curable may come, and this will give them the time they need until something else that is going actually to save their life arrives. Thank you.
Thank you. So as we have just a few minutes left, I would like to invite each of our speakers to maybe briefly share one key piece of advice for National Cancer Mission Hub seeking to engage with the pharmaceutical industry, like a takeaway message.
I'm happy to start. And I think we all agreed on this. Please make us part of the dialogue. We want to partner with you, and the earlier the better, because we really want to do it. And as Magda explained, it is about real partnership. So definitely funding is one of the pieces, but it's just on those several ways that we can actually engage meaningfully.
And I can add what Sebastian just said. So collaboration works best when it starts with listening, engage stakeholders early, and genuinely seek to understand the perspective, and let's co-create solutions grounded in shared goals. So we really believe that, and we have seen it, that this approach really builds trust and leads to outcomes that are not only impactful, but they are also sustainable for a long time.
On my end, I think that public-private partnerships are often misunderstood. And also not necessarily encouraged, and not because people don't like them, but because they don't have them in mind. We all operate in our own silo and don't always think about partnering with the others. So I would say my piece of advice is when you think about the challenge that you have, are you better off doing that alone, or are you better off doing that with somebody else? And if it is with somebody else, then just go and partner. That would be my piece of advice. And maybe a request. The national hubs can help us to convey the message that sometimes partnering is better than working alone, and that it is a desired feature of resolving the problems. I think if we all say that it's something that it's useful and helpful, we are going to engage in these collaborations much more.
And I go last. So for me, it's really first of all, yes, ECOS, we will help spreading the news at national level with the association. Be reassured, we are already doing that. So I wanted to say before forgetting it, so rely on us to do that. And then maybe for me, the other point is resilience and pragmatism. So whenever we are trying anything new, or like you trying something that was not there before, um, how do they say, the first notes are never heart or are never music, but we don't give up. So that's one of our feature, and I really appreciate the same on your side. Resilience, we will get there. And then maybe be remind, we all come from different positions, but we are working for the same objective at the end. And that should be like a glue that will help advancing things at national level and also international level. And keep doing, we need you there.
Thank you. Those were excellent takeaways. In closing, today's sessions, I think, really highlighted what meaningful collaboration between national cancer mission hubs and the pharmaceutical industry looks like. And this is possible and necessary to accelerate progress in cancer care. Our speakers really emphasize the value of early, transparent engagement, the importance of trust and shared goals, and the need to move beyond misconceptions. Real-world examples showed us how structured collaboration can lead to better patient outcomes. I would like to give a warm thank you to our speakers and to all of you who joined us today. We hope that these sessions really support your ongoing work, and we look forward to continuing this conversation in the ECOS community. See you next time.